Oh, it's kind of dark in here. Hold on a second here. Just give me a moment. I'll find the light switch. There we go, that's better. Now you can see me. Welcome to my new Goblin studio. It's not much. I mean, it's actually a bit of a cave, but it's mine. How you doing? I hope you're doing well. It's been a minute since I last uploaded. Last year was rough, to say the least. Thankfully, even with the numerous delays to a number of highly anticipated movies,
I'm headed straight for the floor.
We still ended up with some really solid ones, and I wanted to take some time to share a few of my favorites from the endless year that was 2020. For being a year where I was only able to make it to theaters twice before the pandemic hit, we still ended up with a lot of really great movies. And while I'd like to talk about everything I saw last year, for time's sake, I'm only going to talk about 10. So before I get into my top 10, let's take 30 seconds for some honorable mentions. If you want to keep up with what I'm watching, feel free to follow me on Letterboxd. There's a link in the description below, and while you're down there, you might as well hit the subscribe button and that notification bell.
So, I ended up getting fired.
What happens when you pair a runaway boy with a girl who can control the weather and a soundtrack from the Radwimps? You get me crying, that's what you get. If you've seen director Makoto Shinkai's previous work, Your Name, you'll recognize a lot of story beats and similarities between the two films. And while his latest work doesn't reach the same heights as its predecessor, it's still an excellent film in its own right and well worth checking out.
Alright, interface is active and we're at full power. This might be a bit of a rough jump.
Just do it.
As you wish.
Brandon Cronenberg's Possessor shares a lot of the same DNA as some of his dad's early work like Scanners. It's a dark, small-scale sci-fi horror film where a secretive organization of assassins possesses people's bodies in order to carry out their hits. When this organization takes on one of their biggest contracts yet, they assign their best agent to the job. Things begin to get messy as the process of possessing people begins to take its toll on her, and she starts to lose her sense of self. This is not one for the squeamish, as it's unrelentingly violent, and it made me uncomfortable more than a few times. But if you can stomach the gore, it's well worth a watch because it's super thought-provoking. I have more thoughts on this one, but I think I'm going to save them for a future video because there's a ton here that could be unpacked.
Annabeth has risen from the ocean. It has followed us here.
Remy Weeks makes a super strong impression with his debut feature film, His House. Like most of my favorite horror movies, there's so much more to it than just a few scares. It's a movie about refugees being haunted both literally and figuratively by the ghosts of the war-torn home they've had to flee from. Ball and Rial are such great main characters, and their different wants and needs play off each other in really interesting ways. Ball so desperately wants to assimilate and abandon the culture of his country, where Rial tries desperately to hold on to it, all while Annabeth, aka a night witch, haunts them. With great scares paired with some really striking visuals all tied together with a solid emotional core, this all makes His House a must-see horror movie for any horror fan. If you have a Netflix account, I highly recommend you check it out as soon as this video is over.
Okay.
Prøv at det er overhovedet ikke, fordi jeg skal blande mig eller rode din ting.
Jo, det er fint, men det ved jeg ikke, om det er...
This seals the deal on Thomas Vinterberg and Mads Mikkelsen being one of my favorite director-actor combos of all time. Another Round is a dramedy about alcohol and the ups and downs that come with the substance. Mads Mikkelsen plays Martin, a high school teacher who is struggling. His students feel that he's failing them, and his marriage is on autopilot. One night at a dinner for a fellow teacher, one of his coworkers brings up a theory that humans are born alcohol deficient, and to maximize your potential, you should have a bit to drink every day. The next day, Martin decides to test this at work, and he teaches the best class he's taught in years. He reports his findings to his friends, and the group begins to experiment. And as they all continue to drink, they find their lives improving a bit, so they decide to increase the amount they drink. And this is when things get messy and complicated, because their lives start to take a turn for the worse as the alcohol starts to impact them in negative ways. And even though the film's second half is pretty melancholy and gets a little dark, it all builds up to this wonderful end sequence that is a celebration of picking yourself back up and just embracing life. It's that mental clarity after a really long fog of depressive days. And I don't know. If there was something I needed in 2020, it was that end sequence. In the wrong hands, Sound of Metal could have easily turned into an overly dramatic Oscar bait film. Thankfully, we had more thoughtful hands on deck for this one, and we got something way more beautiful. Ruben is a drummer who is beginning to lose his hearing on tour, and he's also a recovering drug addict. So concerned for his well-being, his bandmate and girlfriend Lou work to get him set up at a community for deaf recovering addicts. In the alternate reality where this was made to be a super Oscar baity film, the movie would have painted Ruben losing his hearing as some kind of horrible nightmare. But Sound of Metal chooses instead to focus on the journey of finding a new way to live life. We get to watch Ruben smile and find a new community. Riz Ahmed's performance as Ruben, paired with the incredible sound design, does such a fantastic job putting you in Ruben's shoes, all while being respectful to the deaf community without putting them on a pedestal. It's a truly moving film about finding peace with change.
Thank you, or whatever. Here, this should cover that. Unless you bought it in bulk, I don't know.
Kajillionaire is all at once one of the most uncomfortable and also sweetest movies of the year. The Dine family are con artists. They're off the grid, living in an empty office space attached to a soap factory that leaks into the building, and every day is a struggle to survive. The parents of this strange family unit have never treated old Dolio, their daughter, with love and compassion. She's always simply just been a tool to help them pull off their various scams. Eventually, they bring an outsider in on one of their schemes, and this opens old Dolio's eyes to the lack of care and compassion her parents have provided to her. It's at this point that the movie becomes more than just kind of a quirky one, but it turns into something a lot more thoughtful and heartfelt. Evan Rachel Wood steals the show in this one as Old Dolio. She does such a great job playing this awkward character in a way that doesn't feel like she's mocking the character. It's clear she understands who Old Dolio is at her core. This is hands down the best performance of her career and one of the best of the year.
I wanted to talk to you about why I dropped out. Okay, sure. You remember what happened, right?
I'll admit, when I first saw the trailer for Promising Young Woman, I wrote it off. I didn't trust it with its subject matter because for me, most rape revenge movies fail to tackle the topic without being exploitative. This is one of the few that works for me on every single level. Director Emerald Fennell pulled off one of the best tightrope acts I've ever seen in a film. She's somehow able to perfectly balance its comedic elements with the revenge plot without ever teetering off the edge. The film's protagonist, Cassie Thomas, is out to avenge the horrific events that led to the eventual death of her friend Nina. Cassie is a complicated character who has a lot of layers to the struggle she's going through, and Carey Mulligan does an amazing job playing her in a believable way. It would be a shame if she doesn't get at least an Oscar nomination for her role. There are just so many brilliant decisions made throughout this movie, from the genius casting of various famous TV nice guys like Adam Brody to play the different douchebags that Cassie picks up throughout the movie. And then there's the incredible use of music throughout. I mean, the movie instantly made a Paris Hilton song from 2006 that I think Time had totally forgotten about feel like a classic that I should have known. It's a shame that this movie can't be seen in a crowded theater because it has the most crowd-pleasing cathartic finale I've seen since Get Out.
아이고 똑똑한 놈. 잘했다 잘했어. 네가 이겼다.
Minari has had hype building for it for a long time, and I didn't really honestly expect that it could live up to all the expectations that had been built up for me, but when I finally got around to watching it, I was absolutely charmed by it. It's about the American dream and centers around a Korean family trying to start a farm in the middle of Arkansas. It so expertly captures the energy and feeling of a Midwestern summer, and then the way the cinematography frames the scenery is just absolutely breathtaking. At the center of the film is a really wonderful relationship between David, the youngest in the family, and his grandmother, who has just moved from Korea to help watch the children during the day. At first, David is disappointed in his grandma. She's not the grandma he sees on American TV. She doesn't bake him cookies and instead teaches him how to gamble. Their relationship is probably the sweetest thing I saw in film all year. Minari isn't cheesy feel-good, and it's not devastatingly heartbreaking. The family in this film is the same as many families. They have their struggles, and they also have their triumphs. It's the cinematic equivalent of a warm hug, and it's one that will stick with me for a long time.
Fresh oily cakes. Best this side of the Sandwich Islands.
Don't look like hardtack or soda bread.
Look like some kind of pancake.
I still love this movie, and I rank it very highly. I've written the Academy about 10,000 letters demanding that Eve get an Oscar for her performance. Yes, I'm talking about Eve the cow. Yes, I think she should have her own category, and I stand by that proudly. And the Academy are cowards because they have not replied to my letters yet. I've already reviewed this one, so I'm not going to really talk about First Cow in this video. So if you want to hear my thoughts on First Cow, you should go check out that video on this channel. "2020 was a long year, and I, like many other people, spent most of it inside. So it doesn't surprise me that my top 3 movies are all films that feature stunning shots of lots of landscapes. And more than anything, what I missed last year was the human connection you get when sharing a space with other people. And I think that's why Nomadland ended up being my favorite movie of 2020. Like always, Frances McDormand turns in another excellent performance as the character Fern, a woman who has lost everything and is living the life of a nomad as she travels from place to place in her van. On the road, Fern meets all kinds of people and has a variety of enlightening conversations with them. Many of the people Fern meets are real-life nomads, and it helps make everything feel even more authentic. Chloe Zhao has such an incredible talent as a director to really understand people and to portray them with dignity and grace without looking down on them. Nomadland is all at once a celebration of life itself and a quiet condemnation of an America that has eroded the safety net and forced people into this lifestyle. It is joyous and melancholy and will be in my thoughts for a long, long time to come. There you have it, my top 10 of 2020. What were some of your favorite movies that came out last year? Go ahead, tell me in the comments below. And if you liked the video, you should give it a like and feel free to subscribe if you want more Goblin thoughts. I'm hoping to upload a lot more in 2021 and would love if you join me for this ride. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you down the road.